March 5, 1974. Geraldo Rivera sits across from two Hells Angels presidents in a studio. Moments earlier, he'd nearly been thumped by their crew. That night, everything changed. Here are the 5 most disturbing Hells Angels interviews ever recorded.
The bike rider is Cliff Workman, treasurer of the Hells Angels, the wildest bunch of outlaws to come out of the West since Billy the Kid and the Dolphins. He's here to challenge his biographer, a tense young literary journalist named Hunter Thompson.
December 1967. CBC television studio set shakes as Cliff Workman, treasurer of the Hells Angels, drives his chopper right onto the floor. Sitting across from him is writer Hunter S. Thompson. His recently published expose on the motorcycle gang has stirred up anger and division. The atmosphere is thick with tension, and everyone senses this encounter won't be a typical television segment. Hunter S. Thompson, a rising star in journalism, built his reputation by embedding himself deep within the outlaw biker world. For more than a year, he lived, rode, and partied with the San Francisco and Oakland chapters, gaining unprecedented access to their secretive world. His resulting book, Hells Angels: The Strange and Terrible Saga of the Outlaw Motorcycle Gangs, painted a vivid picture of the club's violent lifestyle and internal code, challenging romanticized public perceptions. Thompson's blend of first-hand reporting and personal involvement would go on to create his celebrated gonzo style of journalism.
What did you think of the book?
Well, I'll tell you, Al and Hunter, everybody in this room, that book is 60% cheap trash.
The book didn't just ruffle feathers, it sparked outright fury among the Angels. Workman immediately confronts Thompson. The author coolly counters, "Let's face it, you're not a typical Angel, and I know that, and you know that." The room vibrates as both men take their opening shots, establishing an adversarial tone that will only intensify. Thompson's attempts at journalistic objectivity clash head-on with Workman's raw bravado and thinly veiled threats. Workman tries to paint Thompson as an opportunist who exploited his access for fame and profit, joking that the writer owes them 2 kegs of beer as payment for their stories. Thompson, ever the provocateur, insists that Workman isn't representative of the average Hells Angel, suggesting the club selected a cleaner-cut member to appear on television. Tension escalates when Workman refers to why you got your head thumped on. This alludes to a brutal incident during Thompson's final days with the club, an attack that marked the violent end of his association with the Angels. But the heart of their conflict centers on 2 dramatically different versions of that pivotal night. Workman gives his version first.
Junkie George was beating his old lady.
Junkie George? Junkie George?
Junkie George.
The casual, almost proud reference to domestic violence shocks the audience. Workman continues, "But if a guy wants to beat his wife and his dog bites him, that's between the 3 of them, right?" Nervous laughter ripples through the studio, most likely unsure how to react to such a blunt normalization of abuse. After this disturbing revelation, Workman details how Thompson stepped in and said, "Only a punk beats his wife and dog." This intervention supposedly triggered the violent beating Thompson received from several Angels members. Workman frames Thompson's actions as disrespect, suggesting anyone who questions Angel justice becomes a target. Thompson tries to give his side. "There was somebody about 30 feet to my left beating his wife to a pulp on the rocks." He paints a picture of drug-fueled violence and chaos that forced him to intervene, not out of disrespect, but basic human decency. But before he can elaborate, Workman interrupts with perhaps his most chilling line.
She was lying on the rocks, and he was giving her this,
To keep a woman in line, you gotta beat him like a rug once in a while, you know?
The words hang heavy in the studio,
shocking both audience and television host. This isn't just bravado, it's a raw glimpse into the deeply embedded culture of violence that Thompson documented in his book. The studio host, likely concerned about broadcasting standards and audience safety, abruptly ends the segment with a tight, "I'm sorry, Hunter, we're finished." The sudden cutoff leaves Thompson unable to give his full account. The tension never truly resolves,
only cut to black by necessity. Even as the cameras fade, Thompson's frustration shows. In other words, I can't get my own version of it. This abrupt ending underscores the challenge of covering organizations that actively distort or suppress journalistic truth. The aftermath of this encounter rippled far beyond the CBC studio walls. Thompson reported receiving anonymous threats and continued harassment from club members. Workman, on the other hand, became an infamous representative of the club's views on violence and personal freedom, a role he seemed to embrace with pride. What made this footage so disturbing wasn't just the violence described, but Workman's complete lack of remorse or self-awareness. His casual justification of abuse and open contempt for societal norms forced viewers to confront the reality behind the outlaw image. The segment remains a chilling example of how difficult it can be to hold powerful subcultures accountable, especially when they actively reject outside authority or morality. For Thompson, the encounter cemented both his reputation as a daring journalist and the dangers of gonzo reporting. Hell's Angels became a bestseller, launching his career and inspiring future generations of immersive journalists. But it also served as a warning about the personal cost of getting too close to violent subcultures. As Hunter S. Thompson himself observed, their claim that they don't start trouble is probably true more often than not, but their idea of provocation is dangerously broad. This televised confrontation proved just how literally the Hells Angels could take that philosophy, and how difficult real truth can be to capture when violence is part of the code. But as disturbing as this segment was, the next case takes the twisted relationship between journalism and outlaw culture even further.
Film crew had recognized discretion as the better part of valor and had split.
March 1974. It started with a confrontation no crew member wanted. Geraldo Rivera sits in a New York studio, caught between cruising club presidents and his own principles. Right before those studio lights, he describes his film crew abandoning him as discretion proved the better part of valor. The line between reporter and reluctant participant blurred quickly. Who were these men daring the mainstream to judge them? This wasn't just another television interview. It was an uneasy standoff between Geraldo's world and theirs. Across from him, Sandy Alexander, president of New York's chapter, and Deacon Proudfoot, Oakland's leader. Two faces of the motorcycle brotherhood, both wearing their colors proudly, both speaking for a club sandwiched between myth and menace. Sandy didn't mince words about who qualifies as a man deserving the Hells Angels patch. These aren't cartoons, he insists, laying out a code forged in steel and personal conviction. Their definition of family extends beyond blood. It's loyalty, respect, and unwavering commitment. But it's also about standing up, even when standing alone. Yet even as they try to soften their image as misunderstood brothers who love motorcycles and freedom, Deacon slides in a warning.
It takes a man to be a Hell's Angel, somebody that stands up for what he believes in.
There's pride, but under it, a lurking threat of direct action. That mix of closeness and calculated violence creates an uncomfortable tension in the studio air.
When you started wanting to come up and film us, right, you didn't come up and give us courtesy to come up and say, hey, you know what, I'm so-and-so, I'd like to be introduced to such and such, and when you met,
Sandy's open about their code. It's about courtesy. In club culture, failing to show basic respect is a dangerous gamble. A recent confrontation with Geraldo.
That's why we chased you down the block. Cut your television cord.
Violence isn't mindless. It's a calculated response to disrespect, part of their world's rules. Deacon adds,
It would be a better world if people solved problems this way. Their code, when words fail, fists, or worse, follow.
At the heart of the interview is this conflict between a mainstream society that fears the Hells Angels and the club's carefully controlled self-image. Geraldo challenges their intimidation tactics, but Sandy argues it's just their confidence, not their violence, that scares people. Now comes the real tension. Geraldo presses about violence. Sandy shrugs. Violence is inevitable, a natural result when dealing with disrespect. They don't apologize for it, They institutionalize it. Membership numbers, club business, classified information. Money, also off limits. These family values include absolute secrecy. Enter Vinny, shirtless, heavily tattooed, towering over everyone. Asked about the weapon at his side, he deadpans it's for peeling bananas and oranges and stuff like that. Dark humor, but with real menace behind the joke. This is intimidation baked into everyday banner. Now the most shocking moment. Vinny's pregnant wife, without missing a beat, admits they don't know whose child she's carrying.
We'll figure it out.
It's a jarring glimpse into the Angels' alternate world, where club loyalty outweighs conventional morality. Then she explains their support system.
If Vinny dies, the other members will take care of me.
Brotherhood means more than protection. It means sharing everything, even spouses. There's a twisted logic to it, alien to outsiders, but perfectly regimented within their closed society. Finally, both presidents end with a slice of philosophy. Sandy urges individuals to stand up for what you believe in. Deacon wants judgment based on actions, not affiliation.
Don't convict somebody for what they are. Convict for what they've done.
Their parting wisdom sounds decent, if only the underlying threat wasn't so close to the surface. Geraldo's closing words stick.
Barely tamed wild animals. Their violence is inevitable.
The segment ends, but the tension remains. An uneasy truce between outlaw code and public scrutiny. Whoa! This wasn't just television. It was two worlds colliding under hot studio lights, both sides armed, literally and metaphorically. Geraldo's gamble paid off this time. The cost? A close-up look at a brotherhood that will defend itself at any price, and an uneasy peace, for now. Next, see what happens when the Hells Angels call a press conference in the middle of the Vietnam War.
The very idea of the Hells Angels holding a news conference conjures up some unusual and perhaps interesting ideas about social comment.
November 19th, 1965. The Hells Angels, known for violence and open defiance of authority, called a press conference at Dorothy Connor's bail bonds office in Oakland, California. News reporters gathered with cameras ready, not knowing what to expect from the gang that had earned national infamy. What came next would become one of the most bizarre and revealing moments ever captured on tape. Sonny Barger, the president of the Oakland chapter, sat at the center of the group. With slicked back hair, dark sunglasses, and a leather vest, he exuded casual menace even as he prepared to read a carefully written statement. Around him sat other club leaders, each marked by their individually patched vests and the infamous Death's Head logo. But it wasn't just their presence that set the tone. The location itself told a deeper story. Dorothy Connor wasn't just their bail bondsman. She was famous throughout Oakland law enforcement as the Hells Angels' preferred way out of legal trouble. Her office bore silent witness to years of arrests, court dates, and the club's uneasy relationship with the law. Now in her cramped office, the Angels were about to make one of the most unexpected public declarations of their infamous career.
Although we've stated our intention to demonstrate this despicable, un-American activity, we believe that in the interest of public safety and the protection of the good name of the city of Oakland, we should not justify the VDC with our presence.
The despicable, un-American activity was Berkeley's planned anti-Vietnam War demonstration, something the Hells Angels, paradoxically, condemned as traitorous. Barger began by announcing the club's initial plan to confront the protest directly, then explain their sudden change of heart.
We intend to absence ourselves from the scene, and we encourage all citizens to do the same, he said.
The reasons we have made this judgment is because, number one, our patriotic concern for what these people are doing to our great nation may provoke violent acts by us.
The irony was impossible to ignore. The Hells Angels, not exactly known for civic-minded restraint, were now positioning themselves as protectors of American values, dangerous only in their righteous patriotism. This sudden role reversal set the stage for increasingly tense exchanges with skeptical reporters. Before launching any grand speeches, Barger insisted that the decision was entirely the club's own. Reporters pressed for clarification, suspecting authorities had strong-armed the Angels into backing down. Barger's response was classic outlaw bravado.
Well, the thing of it is we haven't been told to do nothing. This is our own decision.
Then came the bombshell. Barger reached for a piece of paper and began reading aloud a telegram that had been sent. He claimed to President Lyndon Johnson himself.
President Lyndon B. Johnson, 1600 Pennsylvania Ave, Washington, D.C. Dear Mr. President, on behalf of myself and my associates, I volunteer a group of loyal Americans for behind-the-line duty in Vietnam.
The Hells Angels, outlaws once hunted by the very government now fighting in Southeast Asia, were publicly offering their services as guerrilla fighters. It was both a pointed political statement and a pitch for legitimacy. A way to paint themselves as true American patriots, willing to fight for their country. Reporters were quick to seize on the absurdity of the situation. One asked directly,
Do you feel especially qualified for guerrilla activity?
Well, people's been calling us that for years. Well, I think we all got guts. We're not afraid to fight for what we believe in.
Barger's answer was pure motorcycle gang bravado. When pressed further about their actual military qualifications, Barger doubled down.
I had jungle training when I was in the service.
As the questions became more pointed, the club's true hierarchy became painfully obvious. When a reporter asked whether the Hells Angels' female associates approved of this decision, Barger's response was absolutely clear.
They have no say about it.
The room filled with nervous laughter, except from the women present who remained silent with forced smiles. This single sentence revealed more about the club's internal power structure than any official statement. Throughout the rest of the press conference, Barger and his associates maintained a careful balance. They wanted to appear responsible and civic-minded, dangerous only when provoked, while still keeping their outlaw edge. As the cameras rolled, they insisted their decision was about protecting public safety, not giving in to pressure. Reporters continued to press for contradictions, especially regarding constitutional rights. One asked if Barger believed the protesters had the right to march. He quickly shut down any political or legal debate. I don't want to make no more statements. That's our feeling about it, and that's it. Behind the scenes, the reality was more complex. The Hells Angels had attacked anti-war protesters just weeks earlier, resulting in 6 arrests and multiple police officers injured. Legend even claims poet Allen Ginsberg hosted a party for the Hells Angels, providing recreational substances in exchange for their promise not to attack the next march, though what really swayed their decision remains a matter of speculation. As the press conference wound down, Barger maintained his careful balance of patriotism and menace. The television cameras captured his final statements about supporting the war effort, while not actually deploying the Hells Angels to Vietnam. The public reaction was immediate and divided. Many saw the Angels' sudden patriotism as pure theater, an attempt to clean up their image while keeping their outlaw edge. Others recognized the deeper political message, that even America's most infamous outlaws claimed allegiance to the flag and country, as long as it suited their interests. One thing was certain, the press conference marked a turning point in how the Hells Angels presented themselves to the world and would set the stage for more complex battles ahead. In our next case, a former Hells Angels president talks about leaving the gang in an explosive interview.
Today, it seems to be the new norm. Everybody that's in an outlaw bike club, when they leave, they're out bad now. It's kind of, I started a trend maybe.
December 2024. George Christie sits across from CBC News, finally ready to discuss the fallout from leaving the Hells Angels. For decades, he was the president of the Ventura chapter, one of the most prominent figures in the club's history. Today, he's a marked man in the outlaw world and a living legend to outsiders. To understand the significance of this interview, you need to know who George Christie was and what he became. Born in 1947 to a traditional Greek family in Ventura, California, Christie grew up surrounded by the strict expectations of his community. But by his early 20s, he had joined the Hells Angels, quickly rising through the ranks to become president of the Ventura chapter by 1978. Back then, joining an outlaw motorcycle club was a conscious, serious decision. Christie built the Ventura chapter from scratch, spending 35 years as one of the most notorious Hells Angels in America. He wasn't your typical biker. His intelligence, charm, and understanding of the legal system made him the club's spokesman, often saving members from serious consequences with his ability to navigate gray areas of law and loyalty. But that same intelligence became a threat to the club's leadership. As the years passed, Christie's vision for the club clashed with traditionalists like Sonny Barger. Power struggles became inevitable. Sonny Barger, the Hells Angels' longtime leader, forced Christie out of the club. But he didn't stop there. Barger launched a campaign to destroy Christie's reputation in the outlaw world, accusing him of betraying the club's most sacred principles. In the culture of outlaw motorcycle clubs, your name and your word are everything. When someone attacks your character, you have to take it personally. Christie felt he had no choice but to fight back, publicly. His response? Writing Exiled on Front Street. The book is more than a memoir. It's Christie's defense against the attacks on his integrity. He was told he couldn't write, couldn't perform, couldn't film. He did all three.
I felt I had to write the book. They told me I couldn't write the book. I wrote it anyways. I was told I couldn't do the show. I did a stage show called Outlaw. I was told I couldn't do the stage show.
Through his book and stage shows, Christie took control of his own narrative. He didn't want some outsider misrepresenting his story decades later. He wanted to set the record straight himself. But the personal cost was enormous. The interview reveals the toll all this took on his family, especially his first wife. They were high school sweethearts, and she stood by him through everything. Now looking back, Christie admits he didn't have all the tools to juggle outlaw life with marriage and fatherhood. Maybe, he says, he could have done a better job. But it's not just about internal club politics. Christie describes the relentless law enforcement scrutiny he faced, how authorities would break the law to enforce the law. He calls out the hypocrisy of anti-biker task forces and overzealous district attorneys, especially one who tried to make a name for himself by targeting Christie personally. That vendetta didn't just affect George. It hurt his wife, his children, even his 80-year-old mother. Christie's ultimate act of defiance was surviving all of it and keeping his story alive. Today, through his podcast, Speak of the Devil, and his new book about leadership, Crossing the Rubicon, he's still controlling his narrative. He's shifted from recounting past glory to analyzing leadership styles, drawing from both outlaw and corporate worlds.
If you think walking away from a criminal organization is as simple as taking off a jacket, Christie's story proves it's not, especially when your enemy writes the rules. His battle isn't just with the Hells Angels, it's with anyone who tries to rewrite his history. In our final case, a Hells Angel has a brutal standoff with a reporter in the streets of New York.
Oh, hello. Hello.
Please respect our privacy.
Okay.
I'm going right now to the 9th precinct because right now we're being harassed.
Who's
we don't want to
harassing
be. This has been harassment. You
This
pull
isn't.
March 12th, 2025. A reporter stands on the sidewalk outside the Hells Angels New York chapter building, camera rolling in hope of capturing a rare interview. Suddenly, the front door swings open, and a man in full Hells Angels attire steps out. He faces the camera directly, and the tension in the air is instantly palpable. It's rare to get close to any Hells Angels chapter in New York City. For years, their Lower East Side club has been infamous for excluding outsiders, especially the press. Most local journalists know better than to approach without invitation, but this particular TV crew was determined to break that silence. Their opening greeting is polite, almost hopeful, but the response is immediate and unmistakable. The man holds up his hand, blocking the camera, his voice firm. This isn't just a request, it's a declaration of boundaries. For decades, the Hells Angels have carefully controlled their public image while fiercely guarding their private world. Here in New York, those boundaries are enforced with particular intensity. The club had just recently moved its headquarters to 77 East 3rd Street in Manhattan, following years of tension at its previous East Village location. That move alone had been newsworthy, and now the local media wanted answers about their new presence in Manhattan. But this interaction quickly shows why interviews with the Hells Angels are so rare. The confrontation escalates rapidly, moving from a simple request to an outright threat. Suddenly, it's not just about privacy anymore. Now it's a legal matter. This isn't the first time the Hells Angels have used legal threats to control public encounters. In fact, it's a well-established tactic, turning the tables by presenting themselves as victims of harassment whenever unwanted attention arrives. The members' angry gestures and pointed accusations are straight out of the Hells Angels playbook for dealing with nosy outsiders. The reporter tries to clarify who exactly is being harassed, but the response is clear and direct. At this point, there's no question. The Hells Angels see themselves as the victims and the press as the aggressor. By now, the pattern is obvious. Any attempt to gain access or information is quickly flipped into an accusation of harassment. The club member acts as a gatekeeper, making it clear that no answers will be forthcoming, and that any further attempts could have serious consequences. But why this intense hostility toward the press? For the Hells Angels, controlling information is a matter of survival. Their history is filled with tension between public perception and internal reality. Over the years, they've battled both the law and the media to maintain their carefully crafted image while keeping their true activities behind closed doors. This particular confrontation might seem minor, but it's a perfect example of how the club maintains its boundaries. Even in New York City, with cameras rolling and witnesses all around, the Hells Angels enforce their rules with absolute authority. What this footage doesn't show is what happened next. The TV crew, realizing the danger, packed up quickly and left the area. Later reports indicate that members watched their every move from windows above, ensuring they actually departed. But the message was clear. Not just for this reporter, but for anyone looking to shine a light on the Hells Angels in New York. Some doors are meant to stay closed, and those who try to open them risk more than just a cold shoulder. Unlike typical gang confrontations, this wasn't about violence, at least not directly. Instead, it was about psychological intimidation, legal threats, and maintaining absolute control over who gets access. It's a perfect example of how the Hells Angels operate in the modern era. Not just with fists and motorcycles, but with carefully calibrated layers of protection and intimidation.